During the making of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty in 1947, the casting process brought together a group of talented actors, each chosen with careful consideration. Producers knew that finding the right Walter was central because he had to balance daydreaming and sincerity. Danny Kaye was picked after lively discussions among studio executives who believed his comedic timing and boyish charm would give Mitty the appeal audiences needed. His audition was said to be filled with energy, and during his chemistry test with Virginia Mayo, who played Rosalind, the room reportedly felt an undeniable spark. Virginia Mayo impressed the teen during screen tests by providing exactly the combination of warmth and intrigue desired for the mysterious love interest. Boris Karloff was selected for his ability to add a dramatic edge, with his presence alone elevating every scene he inhabited. Bainter, selected for her role as Walter's mother, won over the casting team with her balance of gentleness and firmness, a result of a heartfelt reading that captured the protective side of the character. Meanwhile, Thurston and Rutherford were chosen for their distinctive personalities, honed during a series of readings and rehearsals where they demonstrated perfect comedic and emotional timing with Kaye and Mayo. Throughout the process, producers and directors tested out various groupings of actors in order to create the perfect combinations on screen, holding long sessions to see who best fit the whimsical but emotionally grounded tone the film demanded. Each chosen actor not only fit the look but understood the humor and deeper undercurrents of the project, which brought the entire cast together and helped create on-screen moments that have lasted well beyond the movie's release. From the moment Norman Z. MacLeod stepped onto the set of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty in 1947, he aimed to create a world that straddled the ordinary and the fantastical. Inspired by the original James Thurber short story, MacLeod leaned into visual storytelling that highlighted the contrast between Walter's bland daily life and the vivid, over-the-top daydreams that colored his imagination. Using a soft, almost dreamlike cinematography for the fantasy sequences, MacLeod and his cinematographer aimed to blur the line between what was real and what was only in Mitty's mind. His approach drew on silent-era comedy and slapstick, which shaped his work in earlier films, giving Danny Kaye the space to move fluidly from shy underdog to daring hero with quick, expressive gestures and exaggerated facial expressions. MacLeod encouraged improvisation, especially from Kaye, fostering an environment where the lead could let his comic instincts shine, yet he carefully coached his supporting cast to maintain a sober, matter-of-fact delivery that grounded the narrative. Collaborating closely with costume and production designers, MacLeod ensured every detail, from the drab offices of Mitty's workplace to the lavish locations of his fantasies, helped set the tone for each scene. The director's experience in comedy shaped his timing, making sure jokes landed and emotional beats were clear. MacLeod's willingness to blend fantasy, romance, and comedy helped deliver a film that felt both entertaining and relatable, capturing the wistful humor of Thurber's story while giving it a new cinematic life. Back in 1947, a comedy film called The Secret Life of Walter Mitty hit theaters, following the story of a timid man who escapes his dull life through wild daydreams. Danny Kaye stars as Walter, whose imagination takes him on wild adventures, but these fantasies start to get mixed up with real-life trouble when he becomes part of a strange plot involving jewels and criminals. Since then, the movie has become well known for its clever mix of laughs and surprises. A lot of people found parts of it shocking, while other moments carry a hint of sadness, making it more than just a silly comedy. Many fans say that Walter's story feels true to anyone who has ever escaped their worries by imagining something better, even if it is just for a moment. For those who saw it when it first came out or years later, the movie often brings back fond memories. When was the first time you watched this movie, and what do you remember most about seeing it for the first time? Personally, the film inspired me to look at my own habits of daydreaming, and it made me realize just how much we sometimes rely on imagination to cope with what life throws at us. Has this movie ever helped you see things differently, or inspired you in any way? We would love to hear about your most cherished memory, or your personal experience with Walter Mitty's story, so please share your stories and memories in the comments below. Keep watching this video because there is more to uncover, including some funny, shocking, and sad facts that might surprise you. Meanwhile, on the bustling Hollywood lot, the production of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty in 1947 was a fascinating undertaking. Crews faced the big challenge of translating Walter's extravagant daydreams into vivid scenes, so designers built complex, shifting sets that showed fantasy worlds and ordinary surroundings blending together. The art department worked tirelessly to recreate both the feel of a drab office environment and the wild places in Walter's imagination, using painted backdrops and movable props for quick changes. Many scenes were filmed on sound stages at Samuel Goldwyn Studios, where set designers created everything from towering mountain landscapes to detailed city streets inside the studio. Location filming was limited, partly because portable sound equipment and lighting were cumbersome, so most outdoor scenes were faked indoors with painted flats and clever lighting. Visual effects artists used rear projection, a new technique at the time, to show Walter racing a car or escaping danger without leaving the studio. Technicians synchronized multiple camera shots and layered images over each other to bring Mitty's flights of fancy to life, an innovation that was both risky and expensive. Lighting was another crucial element. Sets had to be adjusted constantly to keep the dreamlike edges and shadows so important to the story's look, and the heat from the old studio lights made shooting long days especially tough for the cast. Costuming carried its own challenges because Walter's character jumped suddenly between fantasy identities, and Kaye needed quick changes behind the scenes. Collaborating closely, the production team kept detailed schedules so that actors, technicians, and set decorators could keep up with the tight shooting timeline. Despite obstacles, including outdated sound recording equipment and frequent set rebuilds, the film's light humor and imaginative worlds were a technical marvel for audiences of the time, all crafted in a controlled studio space using every trick and tool Hollywood had at its disposal. Throughout the 1947 movie, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, viewers are drawn into a whimsical world that mixes daydreams with reality, all anchored by the remarkable performance of Kaye. Many people admire how Kaye's comedic talents shine in the dream sequences, which are regarded as creative, clever, and consistently entertaining. His energetic personality and ability to shift between singing, dancing, and comedic moments turn rather ordinary scenarios into imaginative adventures, and audiences often find themselves laughing at the memorable moments long after the film ends. Some even recall how the cast members themselves appeared to struggle to contain their laughter during Kaye's antics, hinting at a genuine atmosphere of fun on set. On the other hand, some viewers suggest that the film's strengths are primarily due to Kaye's performance, noting that while the movie provides a solid showcase for his talents, its overall impact might not match other timeless comedies of the era. The plot occasionally takes a back seat to the visual humor and lively musical numbers, which means people who are searching for deep storytelling may find the narrative a bit thin. Nevertheless, even critics of the storyline often praise the film's high production values, particularly the elaborate costumes and sets, which effectively enhanced the playful lampooning of contemporary fashion trends. While overproduction can detract from a movie's charm, here it seems to add an appropriately grand touch, making the world of Walter Mitty feel both fanciful and believable at the same time. Kaye himself receives widespread admiration, and there's a sense among fans that while he could have starred in even greater films, he brings enough energy and inventiveness to every scene in this movie to keep audiences entertained. Meanwhile, appreciation is not limited to the crafted gags or Kaye's charisma. It extends to the professionalism of the cast and crew, who managed to maintain composure amid the constant threat of bursting into laughter. This sense of teamwork contributes to the light-hearted atmosphere, and even those who are less taken with the story can find themselves drawn in by the infectious spirit running throughout the film. Some viewers feel that not every comedic attempt lands, but most agree that the overall effect is one of good-natured fun. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty stands as a product of its time, marked by the conventions and sensibilities of the 1940s, yet it offers an accessible entryway into fantasy comedy and musical spectacle, capturing the imagination with its inventive scenarios and energetic performances. For anyone curious about this era or Danny Kaye's appeal, the movie remains a notable and enjoyable example, even while inspiring debate about how well its humor and style hold up decades later. Meanwhile, the music in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty from 1947 does more than serve as pleasant background. It truly brings Walter's daydreams and real-life adventures to life. Composer Roy Webb, celebrated for his work on RKO films, carefully crafted the score to mirror Walter's inner thoughts. When Walter slips into his vivid fantasies, becoming a hero, a lover, or a man of action, the score swells, often turning grand and sweeping. The orchestra emphasizes strings and brass, giving each fantasy a heightened sense of drama and humor. In contrast, when Walter returns to his everyday office life, the music quiets, often light and almost routine, reflecting the contrast between his dreams and reality. Musicians recorded the soundtrack using traditional orchestral instruments, aiming to create a sound that was both cinematic and intimate. In interviews from the time, musicians described Webb as having a playful approach. He encouraged improvisation during certain scenes, letting the players experiment with tempo and phrasing to add an extra layer of whimsy. The film songs also played a special role. Many featured comedic lyrics or exaggerated melodies, matched perfectly with Danny Kaye's legendary musical timing and voice. These songs blend seamlessly into the story, turning dialogues into musical numbers that help keep the film lively. Altogether, the soundtrack becomes a sort of guiding hand for the audience, letting them know when to laugh, feel suspense, or simply enjoy Walter's journey without ever distracting from the story that unfolds. After the shift to sound in cinema, Frank Reicher went back to Hollywood, where he directed German-language versions of American productions. Meanwhile, the influence of the film grew beyond the screen. On November 3, 1947, the Screen Guild Theatre broadcast a half-hour radio adaptation featuring the same leading actors, Danny Kaye and Virginia Mayo, who brought their roles from film to radio for audiences across the country. This kind of adaptation helped keep the story fresh in the minds of moviegoers and radio listeners alike. Doris Lloyd, another figure tied to the era, started her stage career in 1914 with the Liverpool Repertory Theatre Company. What began as a brief visit to the United States turned into a long stay, with much of her movie work taking place in California. Since 1925, she built a solid career with numerous supporting parts, often portraying British household staff or members of high society. Some of her memorable roles include a spy in Disraeli from 1929 and Nancy Sykes in the monogram version of Oliver Twist in 1933. On Broadway, she was part of the cast in An Inspector Calls from 1947 to 1948, taking on the role of Sybil Burling. Each of these individuals, through their own unique paths, contributed to the period's film and theatre culture, making connections between stage, screen, and radio, and shaping the entertainment world of that era. Initially, Walter Mitty's daydream on the train, where he imagines himself as a heroic pilot, stands out as one of the film's unforgettable moments. Director Norman Z. MacLeod uses shifting light and soundtrack to clearly separate fantasy from reality. Danny Kaye's face transforms as he steps into his daydream, his wide eyes and commanding voice instantly giving the audience a sense of Walter's deeper longings. According to MacLeod, These transitions were carefully choreographed to pull audiences into Mitty's vivid imagination before abruptly snapping everyone back to his mundane, browbeaten real life. Kaye later joked in interviews that the secret to those switches was to let your dreams show through your eyes, then blink, and be ordinary again. In the fantasy scenes, color and camera movement become more dynamic, often following Walter in sweeping pans or dramatic close-ups. The contrast is stark when the story shifts back to reality. The framing becomes static, and Kaye's posture shrinks, exaggerating the gap between who Walter wishes he could be and who he really is. Next, the scene where Walter is caught in a suspenseful nightmare involving the sinister Dr. Hollingshead becomes iconic due to its stark angles and shadowy lighting inspired by film noir. The tension is heightened by Bainter's performance as Walter's overbearing mother, her sharp delivery and distracted kindness pulling him back from his fantasy whenever the tension in his dream peaks. Kaye revealed in a magazine interview that the challenge was keeping his comedic timing without sabotaging the building's suspense, a balance that he credited to MacLeod's direction. He said, "Play the stakes real, and the laughs will find their way in." Later, the film shifts cleverly between humor and excitement in the rooftop chase sequence, one of the few times Walter's imagination and reality overlap. Cinematographer Charles Rocha used tilted shots and quick cuts to keep the audience uncertain about whether the danger is real or simply another of Walter's dreams. Virginia Mayo, who played Rosalind, commented that stepping into these fast-cut chase scenes felt like riding between two worlds, as the boundaries between fear and fantasy blurred for both Walter and the viewer. The palpable chemistry between Kaye and Mayo during these high-wire moments brings Mitty's secret desires about love and adventure to the forefront. Throughout, the direction capitalizes on Danny Kaye's extraordinary ability to shift seamlessly between the small, awkward gestures of a shy clerk and the swaggering confidence of Mitty's imagined personas. Critics and cast both noticed how his comedic timing and musical rhythm underpinned even the more serious or suspenseful scenes, grounding the movie's flights of fancy in real emotional stakes. Decades later, film scholars observe that these iconic scenes not only defined Walter Mitty for generations, but they also proved how fantasy could reflect desires and disappointments in a way that felt both funny and a little bittersweet, inspiring audiences to reimagine their own secret lives. During the making of this classic film, Corden worked alongside Boris Karloff, taking on the role of Karloff's brash henchman. Corden and Karloff quickly developed a strong working relationship. Karloff, already well known in the film world, supported Corden and continued to collaborate with him in a couple of later projects. Meanwhile, Bainter, another cast member, was ultimately laid to rest at Arlington National Cemetery after her passing, near her husband, who also served as a military officer. Her connection to the film industry remained notable even after her death. Sue Casey, who also appeared in a small part, would go on to achieve a rare distinction. She acted in 2 films that both won the Academy Award for Best Picture, Separated by Nearly Half a Century and American in Paris, released in the early 1950s, and American Beauty, released in the late 1990s. Only Christopher Lee, another respected performer of his era, appeared in films with a longer gap between their Best Picture wins. Such connections between actors and major awards, along with friendships formed on set, and ties to historic places like Arlington, all contribute background to the experiences surrounding this production, shaping not just the careers but the lives of those involved. Meanwhile, after The Secret Life of Walter Mitty premiered in 1947, audiences found themselves both entertained and somewhat unsettled by its blend of comedy, fantasy, and ordinary life. The story introduces Walter, a shy man perpetually lost in vivid daydreams, where he becomes a hero, only to revert to a meek, unremarkable existence at home and work. He was in the late 1940s, Many recently returned from war or struggling to find their place during a time of rapid societal change, strongly related to Walter's longing for escape. With the war over and the American dream being sold on every billboard, the movie touched a nerve, showing how fantasy can help people face routine and disappointment. At the same time, the film's playful use of imagination to critique conformity and social expectations echoed the feelings of those weary of becoming faceless cogs in a changing world. Furthermore, Kaye's performance brought a sense of whimsy that continued to influence comedic tone in later films and television. His physical humor and expressive face helped set a mold for future leads playing everyday people leading double lives in their heads. The term Walter Mitty grew to mean anyone prone to escaping reality with elaborate fantasies, a shorthand in newspaper columns, and daily conversation for self-made dreamers. Because it was loosely based on James Thurber's short story, but took creative liberties, it also sparked debate about faithfulness to original works and the value of imagination versus practicality. Pop culture borrowed from its imagery, and even psychological studies began referencing the Mitty temperament when discussing daydreams or escapism. The movie became a mirror for post-war America's hopes and anxieties, encouraging conversation about how much of life is spent imagining what could be, rather than living what is. Often, people are surprised to learn about the real-life connections behind the film and its cast. Christine McIntyre, known for her work in classic cinema, is actually the aunt of Christine Walewska, a classical cellist. This small detail connects Hollywood to the world of classical music. Meanwhile, the film's influence can be felt decades later through its links to the industry. Samuel Goldwyn Jr., the son of producer Samuel Goldwyn, worked on the newer adaptation, which came out in 2013. This family involvement highlights a line of film production that stretches from the earlier era into the present. Besides these facts, Kaye's legacy extends past his film roles. According to his daughter Kaye, fans would often approach him in public for years after his performances. Many would enthusiastically recite the pellet with the poisoned speech made famous from another one of his movies, The Court Jester. The phrase became so memorable that it followed Kaye through the rest of his life, becoming a sort of trademark among his admirers. These details show how some movies and roles leave a lasting mark on both the people who make them and the fans who remember them long after the credits roll. Even though the film was based loosely on James Thurber's short story, early critics noted that The Secret Life of Walter Mitty diverged quite a bit in spirit. They praised Kaye's performance as lively and inventive, delighted by his ability to blend singing, dancing, and comic daydreams. Some reviewers, however, felt the film leaned too much on Kaye's star power, leaving other parts of the story thin or unremarkable. The movie's playful use of Technicolor and elaborate dream sequences drew attention, and many audience members found the film to be an easy escape, enjoying the light fantasy amid the pressures of post-war America. Nevertheless, not everyone loved how the adaptation treated Thurber's more subtle satire, with a few critics and literary fans arguing that the heart of the original story was lost in translation. Despite its mixed reception among critics, the film proved a hit with theatergoers who lined up for Kaye's antics and the colorful spectacle. The movie did not win any major awards, but it did receive an Academy Award nomination for Best Art Direction, Set Decoration, Color. While it lost to Black Narcissus, the nomination itself boosted the film's reputation for style and visual inventiveness, especially the skill of the production team. For Kaye, Virginia Mayo, and other cast members, the warm audience response and box office success helped solidify their popularity, ensuring they landed prominent roles in later years, while for director Norman Z. MacLeod, the film added to his list of crowd-pleasing comedies. Its legacy remains closely tied to Kaye, whose zany flights of imagination still draw in viewers whenever the movie is shown on television or released on home video. Initially, filming The Secret Life of Walter Mitty in 1946 was an ambitious process challenged by both the star power of Danny Kaye and the strong directions of director Norman Z. MacLeod. During downtime on set, Kaye kept the cast and crew entertained with impromptu musical performances and comic routines, something that made long shooting days much more tolerable. On occasion, Virginia Mayo, the film's leading lady, would join him, rehearsing elaborate dance numbers that brought everyone together, crossing the usual boundaries between actors and production staff. Moreover, the dream sequences that made the film unique took hours to set up, requiring detailed costume changes and special makeup effects. Sometimes, Kaye would spend well over an hour having his face transformed, often cracking jokes in their makeup chair to keep spirits up. Occasionally, disagreements simmered between producer Samuel Goldwyn and the creative team over how much screen time should be given to Kaye's improvisational humor. But these arguments often melted away after watching his energetic takes. One memorable moment occurred when a small fire broke out on a soundstage, and Kaye, ever the entertainer, turned the emergency evacuation into a slapstick skit, much to the relief of a nervous crew. In truth, the camaraderie and playfulness behind the scenes shaped the lively atmosphere of the finished film, making it not only a fantasy on screen, but a fond memory for those involved. Over time, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty from 1947 has become a well-known example of how daydreams and imagination can shape one man's ordinary life, creating a bridge between comedy and fantasy in classic Hollywood cinema. Drawing from James Thurber's short story, the film offered audiences a new type of hero, a gentle, bumbling man whose inner world is far more colorful than his real life. Throughout the film, Danny Kaye's comic brilliance and charm made Walter Mitty someone many viewers could recognize in themselves, giving the movie a lasting touch. Its use of dream sequences, switching quickly from real-world to fanciful adventures, stood out at the time and inspired later movies to play with storytelling and reality in similar ways. The film's style and use of music, physical comedy, and clever visual tricks helped define a light-hearted yet meaningful tone that influenced comedies that came after. After its release, filmmakers found freedom to mix fantasy with everyday stories, and characters with active imaginations became more common, leading to films about personal dreams, escapism, and the search for meaning in life. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty also encouraged the adaptation of short stories into films, showing that a simple idea could grow into a full-length motion picture. Its spirit of playful invention reached into future stories, including the 2013 remake, which built on the original's themes while creating something new for a different generation. Looking back, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty from 1947 has a way of lingering in the mind, sparking both laughter and a sense of wonder. As you think about your first time watching Danny Kaye slip between his ordinary life and his wild daydreams, you might remember how those moments of fantasy felt oddly familiar, like seeing your own secret thoughts come alive. For some, the film opened a window to the playful side of old Hollywood, blending comedy, adventure, and just a touch of romance that made it stick in memory. Maybe it even inspired you to see movies differently, realizing how much a simple story could bring imagination to the surface and encourage everyone to dream a little larger. Now, take a moment to recall your own experiences with Walter Mitty. Did his awkward confidence or flighty creativity remind you of yourself or someone you know? Did watching his adventures make you look at classic cinema with a new appreciation, or spark memories of movies you watched with family or friends during quieter times? If you have a story or a moment when The Secret Life of Walter Mitty moved you or changed your perspective on movies, share it below and connect with others who remember those same feelings. Keep the conversation going, add your voice, and if you want more looks at cinema's classics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and pass this along to friends who share your love of old movies.